Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to this week's reading wrap up. It is week 21 of 2022 and I have 11 books to chat with you about this week. It was a really great week. I did do a lot of physical reading. There was only one audiobook I think I listened to this week. Also because I was reading a lot of, or no, there was two audiobooks. There was two. Also because I was reading a lot of arcs and fan fiction. And then you'll see what I read at the end of the week, just the other day. I read a lot of physical books, so I was held back a little bit. I've also been naughty and I've been a little bit addicted to Candy Crush this week, which normally is okay because I'm listening to an audiobook while I do it. And this week, it just wasn't great. It was naughty. It was a slow week. But you know what? 11 books in a week is still more than most people read in a month or even a couple months. So it's all right. It was also what I call my free week, which means I wasn't really reading TBR books. I did read a couple, but I just kind of let myself roam free where I wanted to. A couple more announcements to share. So next week is the coming trip that I've been hinting about on and off for a while. I've mentioned it in my updates videos. I'm going to be somewhere from Thursday to Sunday. And I'm supposed to get back on Sunday afternoon, so I will maybe do a weekly wrap up. Here's the thing. I don't know how much reading I'm going to be doing during the week. I know I'm not leaving till Thursday, but I am I'm not a nervous traveler, but I'm an over-prepared person, so I foresee myself packing and repacking my bag many times and double checking that I have everything and running lots of errands, and I foresee me doing that to myself, so just know that. So when I get back, I don't know that I will have a weekly wrap up. So week 22 and 23 will maybe be put into one. But I should have a vlog for you about what I'm doing, where I'm going, what's happening. But just want to put that out there that if you don't see a video, well, you for sure won't see it early Sunday morning when I normally put up my vlogs or my weekly wrap-ups. That won't happen, but it will either go up Sunday evening if I end up having read enough to do that, or else, I will be putting up my, I'll have my May wrap up to go up, so maybe I'll schedule that for that day. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to stress myself because this is the vacation I've been wanting to take for a long time, so I'm so excited. But anyway, one other thing to mention, I do have a new channel member not a channel member, this one's a patron. Sorry, I'm used to saying channel member. I do have a new patron to welcome, and that is Val K. I think I said that because Val is also a channel member. That happens. People double up for me. So Val, thank you so much for supporting my patron. If you guys don't know now, I do this full time since I lost my job little over a month ago, and everyone has been fantastic. So if you're interested in supporting me, please check out my Patreon and channel memberships down below. I have many fun things to offer through that, including exclusive content that's only available to my patrons and early access, which is available to channel members. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get into these 11 books. We'll see if I can do as well as I did last week with keeping it more concise. So the first thing that I finished was awesome. I finished reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is, of course, a reread. This is for the SJM along. We are now at the part of the read along where we will be alternating between series for pretty much the rest of the time because we are reading these in publication order, and A Court of Thorns and Roses was the first time that Sarah deviated from the Throne of Glass series. So yeah, this was so great of a reread, and I've reread this book many times. I've read it physically many times. I've listened to the audiobook many times. But if you haven't been on my social medias, if you only watch me here on YouTube, you should know that there is this company called Graphic Audio, and they have started doing the A Court of Thorns and Roses series with Graphic Audio, and it is literally feels like live action being read to you. It is a movie in your mind that is being played, okay? There is the main narrator who is reading as Feyre, but then any voices or sound effects or any of that is happening while you're listening, and there is a different voice actor for pretty much every character. So yeah, there is not even just having a female and a male narrator, but there is different narrators for everyone. And it is fantastic. It's so exciting. It actually runs a bit shorter than the normal audiobook because they don't say like dialogue tags. The person just says the thing, you know? So instead of saying something like Tamlin said at last, like he would just say his line and then the dialogue tag like isn't said. So that actually cuts out quite a bit, and so it's faster. But it is split into 2 parts because they split it that way. I mean, to be honest, to probably make a little bit more money. But if you buy them directly from Graphic Audio, they're not even as expensive as normal audiobooks would be. And you should be able to get these through your library. Or what I was able to do is these are actually on AnyPlay, and they're coming out on AnyPlay a little delayed from when you could get them on Graphic Audio. Graphic Audio, they might even still be having a sale for Memorial Day, and they have both ACOTAR and ACOMAF available now. ACOMAF won't be available on AnyPlay until June 1st, but it is available on Graphic Audio right now. I'm going to wait and like read it as it's time to read it for the read along. Also to give it time to like come out on AnyPlay, because I already own these books in audio on Audible. I don't need a second copy. But the Graphic Audio it's fantastic. It made the whole experience so much richer. There was animal sounds. The voice of the Surreal, my bones were chilled, like literally bone chilling. The voice of the Bog, Amarantha, when Daddy Reese shows up, like it was fantastic. So this, I mean, even rating this, I feel like is arbitrary at this point. This book series, like I don't even really like rate Sarah J. Maas's shit anymore because they're always just great. They're always just great for me. But I loved this. This cover is my cover from oh, it doesn't say, it just says who did the art. But the art was by Elfian, who does a lot of like art for book boxes. I think these are the Illumicray ones. I also have a different cover too, and I want to get the Dusty Bookshelf covers too, so I'm going to end up with all these covers, but I did that reread. Then I read the arc for Crown of Crimson by Karina Halley. This came out last Monday. This is a continuation of the Underworld Gods. So this is the follow-up to River of Shadows, and it picks up right where it left off. I don't want to spoil that. A couple things that I will say. I really did like the progression in Hannah and Death's relationship. It is very rocky in this one. After the events that, again, end the first book, she is still, you know, trying to get back to her father, even though she has promised Death quite a few things for him to let her father go. She isn't necessarily living up to those things, and he's very upset about that, and he's not the most rational of immortal beings. Let's just say that. We meet his ex-wife in this. We find out more about Hannah's lineage and where she might be from. There, of course, is a lot more sexiness in this one. There is, yeah, there's a lot going on in this one. The kind of detractor for me is I thought that this series was a duet, and it's not. And like in the same way that Karina Halley, like I should just be used to it by now, because Karina Halley honestly is notorious at this point for doing this. And I don't mind if an author is writing a trilogy or a duet, even if I don't necessarily think that they need those. But it made this story feel very like draggy for me, because I did not know that there was going to be more. And I don't even want to say that the third one will be the last, because Karina Halley doesn't say. And like that's a ploy that I really dislike in authors, and I've talked about it before. It's one thing if you don't know when you're writing it that there'll be more, but by the time this book was getting sent out to us, she knew that there was going to be more. And you need to tell your readers that. I'm sorry. It's kind of a shitty thing to do, to surprise people with cliffhangers who are romance readers, because that's literally the one thing that I go into a book knowing is I'm going to get an HEA. So when you don't tell me that there's going to be cliffhangers, it diminishes my enjoyment in the book, because I didn't go in prepared. But on the plus side for you guys, this is me telling you to be prepared, because I did not dislike this book. I'm just being honest that I think that it's a shitty thing to do, to not tell people, because you know your ARC readers are immediately going to be telling the audience. It's not like the audience is then going to go in blind. Like, we're immediately going to tell them. So why wouldn't you tell us that, hey, this one's going to end in a cliffhanger as well? I don't know. It's shitty. I'm saying it. I'm calling it out. Don't do this, authors. Tell us that there's going to be more. Say this is a duet or a trilogy, or I don't know how many books there'll be. Like, just say that, because this is the type of book where there was some really exciting things happening. I was having a great time, but the percentage on my Kindle was running out, and then like some very dramatic stuff happens, and I was like, oh, okay, that's not leading to an ending. This is going to be a cliffhanger. And then it was. So I gave this 4 stars. It is a 4 on the spice rating for me. There was trigger warnings of abuse. There was blood, not blood play as in sexy time, but there is cutting and sharing of blood that has to do with the ceremony. That was a little bit, there is gore and violence. And then, of course, like, this is a cliffhanger. Is a huge, like, a trigger and or a reason that maybe you'll end up wanting to wait till the whole series is out, because that's frustrating. So, I get so annoyed. All right, next I read a couple of fan fictions, which was yay. You know, it was the end of the month, and or still is the end of the month, and I was like, I'm gonna read me some fanfic. So here we go. So I read Unexpected by Ampersand. I had seen, I can't remember where I saw this mentioned, but I had seen somewhere that Ampersand had other books out, or other fanfics out. Sorry, I always just say books. And Ampersand, if you don't know, is the wonderful fanfic author who wrote Contradictions, which is a Dramini that is like a BDSM fanfic that is one of my, like, it's in my top 2 like favorite fics. And I had heard that they had some other works, and one of them is kind of novella length, and it is a surprise pregnancy between Draco and Hermione. They have a one-night stand at Theo's birthday in his library, and Hermione ends up pregnant. And this story, like, goes through all, like, 40 weeks of her pregnancy, and when Draco finds out and how he finds out, and him being very clear that he wants to be a part of the child's life, and Hermione wanting to do everything on her own. And this had so much potential. I really loved the Draco in this. I really do love how Ampersand writes Draco in now both of the fics that I've read, but they definitely have a very, like, pigeonholed version of Hermione, because this Hermione was almost irrationally stubborn. In my opinion, in Contradictions, which I know is a completely different story, it's a different Hermione, like, that Hermione could be, like, reasoned with better, and she just was very, like, untrustworthy of men and untrustworthy of Draco because of, like, who, you know, what his reputation is. But she was able to be won over in a better way. And this one, she was just so stubborn and so determined to, like, keep Draco out, and she hurt him with her words, like, again and again, and it was just very frustrating. And also, this book had an explicit rating, and there was 1.5 sex scenes in it. So I guess I don't understand quite how AO3 works yet. I need to look up their rating system so I'm not so disappointed. But there was a remembered sex scene, which is like the one in the library. Like, we don't see that happen. We get flashes of it. And then there was one full sex scene once they are, like, you know, experimenting being together. And it must be, like, for the words that they used. But that was the only sex scene. And it had an explicit rating. Like, I've read some that have a mature rating, and I know that there won't be as much smut in it. You know, I'm, like, mentally prepared. But yeah, this one had an explicit rating, and there was hardly anything. And I mean, when I'm reading fanfic for smut, and then there isn't any, that's very disappointing to me. I'm not pulling my punches with that. That's the truth. So this one ended up being 3.5 star for me, and 1.5 on the spice scale. And I literally said, so frustrating. Hermione was so frustrating, and there was not enough spice for what the rating was. That felt like a lie. Even in one of the chapter notes at the beginning, it said, oh, we're earning our explicit rating. And I was like, are you? because ampersand, I know you know how to write explicit, like contradictions is very smutty, but whatever. All right, then I read The Reckoning by Moonbeam37, and this one was a Severus and Hermione, and this one was very intriguing. Like, it was very unique. I almost felt like I had missed a first fic, but I couldn't find one. Like, I looked through Moonbeam37, so I don't know if it was on another fan site or if it just didn't exist, but the author started this one where Hermione had been taking care of Severus during the time after, like, the war ended, and, you know, he would have been, like, he got bitten by the snake and he was recovering from that, and they kind of fell for each other while that was happening. So they have already started a sexual relationship before it starts, and they're actually, like, living together at Shell Cottage. Is it Shell? It's not Shell Cottage. It's the other place that belongs to him. Shell Cottage belongs to Bill and Flo. I can't remember. But they get a letter, they both get letters from McGonagall asking them to return to Hogwarts. Snape to come back and teach, and Hermione to come with the other, you know, people who were 7th year to come back for an 8th year and kind of stay for a semester and, like, get people confident in school again. And so Snape is like, well, we can't be together when we're back at school. You know, that would be inappropriate because even though you're of age, you're going back to be a student and I'm going to be the professor. And so they're like, okay, well, we will just try to stay away from each other for this semester that we're back. And of course that doesn't work. They end up being together, and then this story kind of follows with them through the next many years to Hermione becoming a professor and actually Snape becoming the headmaster, and then them getting married and having their life at Hogwarts, basically. And as their friends find out, and they're not, like, super surprised, like, it turns out a lot of their friends were like, yeah, we knew you guys were seeing each other over the summer, like, you were together all the time. So yeah, it was really sweet, actually. You know, this was an age gap and it was a hidden relationship, and it was just really sweet. It was also very spicy, very spicy. It wasn't like it definitely was a 5 chili pepper for how much sex, but because I don't just rate on, like, how much sex is in something, it was a 4 because it's not like they were doing the spiciest stuff ever, but there was a lot of smut, and it was a very pleasant one. It was nice because a few of the Severus ones I've read lately, some Snape and Hermione ones, he's been very, like, mean in them, and it's been very much like enemies to lovers, whereas this one was actually like friends to lovers, because even though we didn't see that part because it happened before the story, we did see it in the fact that we can tell how close they are to each other. Like, we can tell that they had become friends and then did that. So yeah, I gave this one a 4 stars, and it was a 4 on my spice scale, and there was no triggers or any of those things. It was really great. Then we have some more arcs that I was reading. I got to read Inferno by Amara Ray, which will be book 3 in the Immortal Coven series. So excited to read this. So this did get pushed back to Tuesday. It was actually supposed to be out today that I'm filming this, which is Saturday, but Amara was late by like an hour uploading her manuscript to Amazon, and so they pushed her release date out a couple of days. So it's now going to be coming out on Tuesday. If you love the first 2 books, you 100% are going to want to read this. This is a series where each couple is separate, but you do want to read this series in order because there is an overarching plot for what the hybrid witches, how they're trying to bring down, like, the witching council and trying to stop the, like, evil witches from being evil type of thing. So yeah, you do want to start with Lifeblood and go on. So this one is about Willow, and she is our fire witch, if you can't tell by the title of this one, and she is sent to make an alliance with the berserkers. So it is believed that berserkers are extinct. We know that they're not from Mackay, who is the hero from the first one. I use that because none of these heroes are heroes. They're anti-heroes or even villains in some cases. And Mackay is actually part berserker, and he had found his family's, they're called a brood, and he had been beaten and turned away from them. but he knows that they exist. And so Willow asks him to bring her there, and she is going to try to have a parley with Torek, who is the leader of the brood. And Mackay informs her that if you want an audience with the brood leader, you have to complete 3 trials. And these trials are literally combat, and it's combat to unconsciousness or death. So whichever you can do to your opponent, and you need to win 3 consecutive competitions. And these are done by either, people who have gotten in trouble have to go through the trials, or you go through the trials when you're like earning your, not just your manhood, but like your adulthood, because the women have to do them too. And you go through these 3 challenges, and once you do, you get these brands. So there is branding that happens in this quite a bit. And once you have those, if you're a member of the clan, like now you are an adult and you have respect. And if you are an outsider, now you have the right to talk to their leader. So lots of traditions and things you have to do. And so Willow, she is ready to do what she's got to do. She is a tiny but powerful witch. Only thing is, they get a hold of her and they slap a collar on her that dampens her power. There's also all these rules where like she's not allowed to look upon the face of Torek until she's completed. She's not allowed to have a name until she at least finishes the first one. So she's just called like female until she does that. And partway through her challenges, she, Torek becomes very interested in her. And so he decides that for the rest of her challenges, she's going to stay in his bed. And she's like, well, this is a good opportunity to start getting some information. So they begin a sexual relationship while she's still competing in these competitions. So that's enough of the setup of this. I love this. This also has a virgin hero. Torek, yeah, he's a virgin, which is very weird for their culture because they're very like free with their sexuality. But there aren't a lot of women, and he knows for 2 reasons. For one reason, he doesn't want women to distract him because being the leader, he takes it very seriously. And number 2, if he were to like claim a woman, then like nobody else could have her, even though everyone else, the women, they have a lot of power. This is not a misogynist thing. This is the women, they're allowed to be with whoever they want to. And only the strongest men get to breed them, and then they'll make, more berserkers. But if Torek were to claim a woman, then like she could only be with him. So yeah, part of it is he doesn't want to be distracted, and part of it is he doesn't want to like take a woman off the market if he's not serious about her. Totally altruistic, yes it is. But because he believes that Willow won't be with them for very long because she's going to lose, he might as well have her in his bed while she is. Little does he know. This is another literally on fire entry. Wow, don't mind me being cliche, but I freaking loved this one. There's some amazing lines in this. Oh, and they're always so freaking sexy. There was kinky stuff in here. This was, of course, a fated mate and enemies to lovers, and it was hot. It was hot. I gave this 5 stars, and this was a 4.5 on the spice scale. There is an attempted assault that happens, not by the hero. There's blood play, branding, and violence, and you should read these in order, like I said. Okay, now I have a very controversial book to talk about. Well, it's controversial in my opinion. So I read Strangers in My Bed by Jade West. I got an arc of this. This book comes out on June 2nd, along with like a bunch of other books. And I love Jade West. I've read most of her books. There's a series of hers that's about sex trafficking that I haven't read. And there's a couple others. But for the most part, I've read all of Jade West's books. They're always very kinky. They're always very moving. They're always very intense. And they don't always follow conventions that I'm comfortable with. But I trust Jade West. I just do. I've trusted her books. I don't want to go into a full detailed explanation of this book because to get to what my problems are, I would have to, and I just don't have the energy to do that. But there's a couple things that I want to say about it because I know that as a lover of Jade West, and you guys know that I like her, that you will, want to read a book of hers that I like. And I just want to give some very heavy warnings for this book. And yeah, some of them are because they're sexual in nature, but my biggest warning is the fact that this is not a romance. and it is going to be sold as one. And even Jade, like, there was one of her TikToks, and she's like, does end with an HEA. And I even commented, and I'm like, yeah, I was a bit surprised with where this went. And she's like, I understand. It went in an interesting way. But this is erotic fiction, but it is not a romance, even though it has an HEA. And I'm going to explain. I'm going to put up a spoiler warning for this one. But I'll tell you like what the tropes and the triggers are first, and then I'll put up a spoiler tag. So this has kinky and dynamic play. There is a like sociopath in here. I don't want to call him a psychopath because the way that I like break up my tropes, I have like serial killer / psychopath. That's not the case in here, but there's a sociopath in here, and not the sexy kind that we like an actual manipulator. There is multiple partners. There's mental manipulation, coercion, grooming, abusive relationships, and the heroine is with someone who's not the hero for 95% of the book. And there's no cheating. So let me explain a little bit. And this is where I'll put the 3. So I gave this a 3-star. If I was reading this not as a romance reader, I would have given it 5 stars because it was very emotional. It had a very good message. I want to be clear. When I'm going to talk about this book, I hated it. I hated it in the fact that it's not what I was expecting from Jade West, and not in a good way. And that does not lessen the power of this story or what it's trying to say, or what I assume it's trying to say. Granted, like, I'm not Jade West, so I'm not, but what I gleaned from it, this is a very powerful story, but it's not a romance. This was erotic fiction that had a message. It was not swoony, and it was not sexy. Most of the sex in this book is icky, okay? And not in the fun, kinky way. It's icky. So there's a 5 on the spice scale, and I gave it 3 stars. I actually didn't rate it on Goodreads, but I'm going to have to rate it when I review it on Amazon, and I'm going to give it 3 stars. But as a romance, it gets a 1. Okay, that's a lot of qualifiers. And I want to get through this quickly because I have better, more exciting books to talk about. But here's the spoiler warning for this. This book is about a woman named Cass who is a wedding planner, and she's just broken up. Well, not just, but she was broken up with by a man who like didn't want to commit to her. And she always had dreams, of being married and having kids. She's a wedding planner. She loves planning weddings. And just recently this man has gotten married to someone else, but not her. And she's at a wedding that she planned, not the wedding of her ex, but she's a wedding planner, so she's at them all the time. And she meets this tall, dark, handsome stranger, a little bit of gray in his hair. He's in his 40s, she's 29, and they have a one-night stand. He's completely swoony. He sends her flowers. He buys her gifts. They very quickly are in a relationship. He moves her into his house. He travels for business, but he has her there. He tells her very early in their relationship, he shows her a porno of one woman being gangbanged. She is in a, and he's like, this is what I like to watch this. If you're not interested in this, just tell me now. Just tell me you're not interested in that now, but it's something that I need. It is my sexual desire to watch the woman I'm with be fucked by other men, and then I fuck her at the end, and I like that. And she's interested in it. And they have very kinky sex, even when it's just the two of them. There's lots of, very rough stuff, and she's totally into it. This is a relationship and a sexual situation that she gets into that she consents to everything all the way. But here's the thing. This man is a master gaslighter and manipulator, and as the reader, you will discover this very soon. Like, you'll feel it very soon. It doesn't feel right. And when I was about 30% into the book, I was like, ick. There's something wrong. Like, I don't fully know what the something wrong is, but I could already tell that he would flip sometimes. Like, she would be willing to be with other people, but it'd always be like a little bit more than she wanted, but she would still consent to it. He would always checking in with her, even in the scene, even in the moments. He'd be like, you still okay? Someone else is here to join in. Are you okay with this person joining in? Blah, 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 blah. Like, he would continually check in, and she would do it because she wanted to please him. and she would see how turned on he was, that another person's joining in and another person's joining in. Or when she would be, you know, literally a cum dumpster for like 10 guys before him at the end. Like, she would say yes over and over again. Anytime she was hesitant, he would sometimes he would push her through it, but sometimes he would pause and be like, you sure you're okay? We can stop it all right now then. But, and then after these events, he would reward her and praise her and tell her how lucky he is to have someone who understands his desires. So you get it. You're feeling the ick. You're feeling the ick. And about 30% in, I was like, she can't end up with this guy. But I don't know, because Jade West, she's had some pretty, horrible sexual situations where the person ends up with that guy. So I was like, I don't know. But so I looked ahead and I saw that, okay, so she doesn't end up with this guy. Cool. Let's see what shakes her out of it. And then we kept going and going. And we eventually meet who that guy she has an HEA with is. We meet this guy who's a friend of this hero. I wasn't going to go into the whole thing, but I did need to. But basically what comes about is she's with Anthony, this man who has gotten her into these sexual situations, said that this is his desire to watch her be railed by all these guys and for him to watch it and videotape it and then replay it when they have their alone time sexually. It turns out that he was prostituting her to these men who are fucking her. And she did not know that. He was charging those men. So she was literally in domestic prostitution and didn't know it. She doesn't know if these men are clean. She doesn't know any of that. She was trusting her partner, who eventually becomes her fiance. And she's with him until 95%. And the man who is our hero, he is a friend of the guy and doesn't, he knows about his friend's sexual desires, but he doesn't know that it's a prostitution situation. And when he finds out, he immediately tells the heroine and helps her to get away. And then it skips forward a year and she's with him and they're having a good life together. But 95% of the book is her being wooed and being in the relationship and falling out of love with the man who got her into this. So that's not a romance to me, even if it ends with an HEA, because there was a fuck ton of sex in here, lots of it going on, but the romance, we don't have any of it, because it's not a romance to be watching her with this man who's manipulating her and watching her slowly be gaslit into liking it. But it was awful. So, but what I want to say about it, again, because again, if I hadn't known, or if I hadn't been expecting a romance, I would have given this 5 stars, because it was extremely powerful to mentally see what she was thinking and how he always made her feel comfortable. Well, most of the time made her feel comfortable, and how he was gaslighting her, and we are screaming at her that he is a disgusting animal, and she refuses to see it because look at all the good things he's doing, and he's charmed her family and he's taking care of her, but he's slowly isolating her. He wants her to quit her regular job so they can do this all the time. And he's a rich businessman, but he's sick and he's charging people to fuck his fiance, and he's getting off on it. And it was super disturbing, but it's almost like a domestic thriller in that aspect. And that's why I would say this is erotic fiction, because yeah, there's a lot of sex. It's a lot of it, but none of it is between the heroine and who she ends up with. All of it is between the heroine and her abuser and these men who are fucking her for money. So, I'm not saying this to deter you from reading the book. If you love Jade West the way I do, you have a lot of Jade West to look forward to. But I won't lie, the marketing campaign that she's doing for this book, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, because it very much is like, oh, this is a kinky sex. And you're supposed to think that because that's what the heroine thinks. But I don't think it's fair to walk people into that without a trigger warning for it. Because if you give the trigger warning that this is sex trafficking, you would like immediately know that. And that's what needs to be unraveled as you read it. But nope. So we're moving on now. But there's the warning for that. It's not a romance. It's erotic fiction. It's a very powerfully and well done story. And it has a message of, you know, that domestic abuse and domestic prostitution, it happens every day, and it happens to people who think that they're living the high life and are in a perfect relationship, and then they're not. So, all right. Then I read Like Lovers Do by Tracy Livesay. I don't have a ton to say about this book. I was very bored, and I'm sad about it because this is a book that I've owned it for a very long time. I've had it since it released in 2020. I guess that's not a very long time, but I remember when it came out, I was very excited. It's an interracial relationship. The heroine is Black and she's a doctor, and she's almost fully done with it. She's going through her residency and is going to get a fellowship. And then there's a dust up at her work with an intern who is a spoiled little bitch and tries to get her kicked out of everything. And so she goes on vacation with her best friend and roommate, who's a guy named Ben, and they've been friends for a few years. She has lived in his like basement apartment, like it's a split level, and they've just been friends, but they've always been attracted to each other, but they kept it separate. Ben, he only wants serious relationships, and she only wants flings because of her schedule, but they fake date to help him to help him with a clingy ex, and then sexy times end up happening. The heroine was extremely stubborn and very career focused, and I know that that's a type, like I know that it is, and it's a stereotype, but Ben was so loving and caring, and the way that she spoke to him when she was telling him that, no, I'm always going to be more focused on my career, it kind of made me hate her because she was just so like needlessly cruel to her best friend, and I just didn't like that. It made her very unlikable to me, which was unfortunate. So I gave this 3 stars, and it had a 2 on a spice scale, and I was extremely bored. Alrighty. Let me talk about one other thing, because then I'm going to talk about a whole series. So then, what are we doing here? I will talk about the arc that I read. I got to read Filthy King, which comes out on June 2nd. This is book 7 in the Filthy Fecker series. And obviously I can't say too much since it's book 7. This is a series where you need to read them all in order. And if you're brave enough, you'll also read the other books that interconnect with this series. But you can just read the Filthy Feckers and get everything you need to read. But that starts with Filthy. And Filthy King is revisiting Aiden and Savannah, who also have book 4 or book 5. They have book 5. Yeah, and we're like back to them because something that happens in Filthy Secret, Aiden is now the head of the 5 Points Mafia, and he and Savannah are married, and they have a very spicy relationship. They're amazing, and Aiden is having to prove that he is now the king. His family is a little bit fractured after a lot of the secrets that came out, but mostly they're needing to like reassert their dominance and say that he will be just as brutal as his father was if he has to. And meanwhile, like him and Savannah are discovering like their kind of new dynamic. And yeah, there was a lot more BDSM in this one. It was very spicy. There was some fantastic sex scenes in this, and the chemistry between Aiden and Savannah is fantastic. Another thing I want to comment on, I believe that Serena has finally heard our pleas, because this was 95% focused on just Aiden and Savannah. One of my biggest complaints over the past few books is how many outside perspectives are in a book that says it's someone's book. I wouldn't have such an issue if it just said this is 5 points, book number, whatever. But, you know, no author can do that. Like, they need to have one couple be the center of their book, and she hasn't done that in the past few books. She hasn't, and it's been difficult for me, because I love her world and I love her story, but if you tell me that this is Finn and Aoife, I don't want the other 15 fucking perspectives that get put in there. Like, don't say it's Finn and Aoife's book if there's all their perspectives. Like, I'm just saying it because I'm not the only one who was thinking it. But I hope that my pleas were heard, because this was, again, 95% focused on this couple. And I loved that, because I still felt like I knew what was happening. Like, she still has like text chats that are in there. So we see like them speaking with other people. And there were still a few strategic POVs that showed up. And this way, I was interested in them, because they weren't sucking me out of what was happening with Aiden and Savannah. They were adding things to it. I know I sound super harsh about it. I loved this because it did exactly what I wanted. It was a return to form for her. It reminded me of some of my favorite books in the series, where there's only a couple things popping up. And there's a lot going on. Like, there absolutely is a lot going on. But she writes so many other books that are connected anyway, that I feel like we'll put that in that person's book then, you know? And the next duet that's coming, because she also had the, where do I have those books at? I think they're up there. The Dawn and the Lady was 2 Valentini books that came out like back to back. And then there was some books come out, and then there's going to be the next Valentini like duet that comes out. That's going to be about, I think it's about Lucio's brother. And then we're going to get the first Bratva book, and we do get a Bratva POV in here. We get some POVs of Connor and Lodestar, which Filthy Feck will be out, I believe, much later this year. Filthy Feck will be out, and that will be the last Filthy Fecker book. But she has a lot of things to come out like before then to fill it up. But this was a 5-star read for me. I had a wonderful time. I read this all in one sitting. I loved it. It was 4.5 stars. There was a lot of violence and gore in this one. This is one of the bloodiest ones she's written. But I loved this. I loved it so much. Okay, and now we're going to talk about the Royal Bastards MC by Misty Walker, which I have read the first 3 books in the last like day and a half. So quick backstory about it. I've mentioned this, well, it's in my Patreon only blog actually, so you won't have seen it yet. But Misty Walker, I follow her on TikTok, and she's like one of the sweetest authors ever. She gives really great author advice, and she's written a lot of books with Kay Webster. They have a gay romance series called Lobster Falls. Is it Lobster Falls? Or Lobster Bay? I don't remember, but I've read a couple of those and really like them. And I've seen her like page flips for her biker books, and I just thought they looked good. And so she had a sale recently where she had the first 4 books, which is what's out in the Royal Bastards MC, which this was like a series that was done kind of the way that like the Underworld Kings was done, where there was a bunch of authors who put out the Royal Bastards MC series, and they're the Royal Bastards, like different chapters all around. So there's like ones in, I mean, I'm not sure about this. There's ones in like, let's say LA and in Vegas, and these ones are in Reno, and like, so they're like all over. Like Kay Webster has a series, Kerduki, Elle Boone, Glenna Maynard, like they all have the different ones. And anyway, she was having a sale for these, where she was doing 15% off, but also if you bought the 4 books signed copies, they were $10 off to buy the 4 of them. So I did it. I bought them mostly because I wanted to support Misty, because she's just such a sweet person. And I was like, you know what? I'll give her books a try. She also sent me some beautiful swag with it. So there's like these stickers, and even these like magnets. So this one is Birdie. This one is the Hummingbird. This is Truly. Yes, and this one is Khan and Bexley. And then I haven't read Riley Spiker yet, but this one. So she sent me that stuff, and I had just finished up, what was I doing? Oh, I was actually waiting to read Filthy King. So I hadn't gotten the arc for Filthy King yet. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and read the first book. Because if I wait, I might never read these, and then I'll be sad. So I went ahead and read Birdie's Biker. We're going to go through these kind of quickly. So this one is about Loki and and Bridget, actually is her name. So Loki is the president of the MC, and they are an MC that are actually hitmen. So they take jobs, they do a killing, and they get paid. And our heroine, her father is this like scientist, and he's had a deadly virus stolen by the mafia, actually, and they're trying to blackmail him. And so he hires the royal bastards to try to get it back. And then he also asked them to look after his daughter Bridget, who was there like when he got attacked. And she's 18 years old and she doesn't want to go. She's kind of spoiled, but like she's a nice girl. Like she's spoiled, but it's because she's daddy's girl, not because she's like a bitch or anything. And Loki's like, fine, we'll look after her for some extra money, but we're not going to be like nice or whatever. And the dad's like, it's okay, I just need her protected. And then this is Loki and Birdie's love story. So she is a brat to Loki, but Loki's not exactly nice to her, so he kind of deserves it. This was a great start to the series for me. So obviously age gap, there is a little bit of kinky dynamic in here. Oh, and yeah, and like all of mine are signed because she signed them for me. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. There is a violence and gore in this for sure. Now, I've said in a recent video, my biggest issues are biker culture and biker books. There is the terms like bitch and like club whore used in this book. However, Birdie actually pushes back against those terms quite a bit, and the club whores that there are actually these 2 women who've been living with them for a long time, and they take care of the guys when they need them to. But they're mostly like literally kind of like house moms at the place. It's a weird dynamic, and yeah, it still feels a little awkward in some points, but this was a vast improvement over other motorcycle clubs I've tried to read, and I loved this so much. And the setup for the next one was so enticing that I immediately, I paused to read Filthy King. I was like, nope, you can't binge this, you gotta read Filthy King. So that's when I read Filthy King. But then I immediately started Truly's Biker. This one is about Roch, who, I think that's how we say his name. It's either like Roch or Roch. It's R-O-C-H. And he is a mostly silent member of the team. He also has like 12 pit bulls that have been rescued from being put down because they were fighters. And he has this tiny little teacup chihuahua whose name is Karen. And we find out in the beginning of this book how he got these dogs. And it's because when he was 22, he came back from war, where he had been a prisoner of war. He had been raped and tortured and abused for 6 months over there. And his best friend was this guy named Ricky, who had a wife and kid, and she was 8 years old, and his wife is like in her 30s, and she's a vet. And so when he gets back from war, he has a letter for Ricky, or for Ricky's wife, Ayana, I can't remember say it. And when he brings it there, he's very shaken. He speaks in like 1-word sentences, and he ends up leaving that day having adopted Karen, this sweet little 2-year-old chihuahua who rides in the back of his hood. And it's the cutest thing you've ever seen. And so over the next 11 years, he looks out for Ayana and Truly. And when Truly is 18 and 19, she makes it clear that she has feelings for Roch, and he's like, no, nothing's going to happen. And she is like, well, I'm going to make something happen. So she gets herself into trouble so that he'll get sent to rescue her. And then when things are heating up between the mafia and the bikers, Truly gets herself into a sticky situation that kind of escalates their relationship. This one was fantastic. I loved it so much. I gave this one 5 stars, and this one had a 4 on my spice scale. There is PTSD assault that is alluded to, because we never fully have to live through what he lived through, but we see like parts of it, just in how he reacts to certain things. And then last night I finished Bexley's Biker. This is about Khan, who is the VP, and Bexley, who is their lawyer. Now, Khan gets arrested at the end of Truly's Biker because he's caught stealing a van that was used to blow up a building. And so he is in prison. Now, Khan is a ex-drug user, and he's been in jail many times. He has a lot of like trauma associated with prison, so being behind bars is like very intense for him. And Bexley is this plus size, voluptuous, badass lawyer who like wears way too beautiful of suits for what she does, or for when she goes to speak to the bikers. And she's been on retainer for the bikers for quite a while. And her and Con have off the charts chemistry, like just gaga. It's amazing. Like, it's epic. And Con has usually always been with these like tiny petite chicks because he likes to be able to throw a bitch around, is what he says. And Bexley just is like, you're trouble. Like, I know you're trouble, and I'm staying far away from it. Because Bexley has a past. She was actually married to a man who was a judge when she was only like 20 years old. He was one of the professors where she went. And when he was done being a guest professor, they started dating, they got married, they were together. He became controlling and then abusive. And she found out that he was taking money as bribes for the cases that he was presiding over. And so she stole his money and ran away. She changed her name and ended up in Reno, Nevada, where she has collected clients who are all bad dudes because she wanted the protection of these people. So it was very smart of her. She's very mercurial in what she did. And now when she's working on Con's case, getting him out, he gets out on bail, but he has a ankle monitor, so he can only go to work and to the club. It's all the places he can go. And he's ready to make his move on her. And she's like, you're my client now. And he's like, I don't care. I want you. You're going to be my old lady. I'm making it happen. And boy, does he go about making it happen. And Bexley discovers that she is kind of a pain slut. So there's lots of kinky fuckery that happens in here, and it's fantastic. Also, Con has a magic cross piercing, which if you don't know, is when you have 2 piercings through the head of the penis, so that there's like 4 balls around the top of it. So there's that. Bexley actually gets a piercing at one point in this book, so that's fun. And they're great. There was a heartbreaking part of this book, though, for what it doesn't even quite happen in the 3rd act, but there's some choices that Bexley is making to protect Con and the bikers that is very difficult and painful to watch her make. But I loved her so much. You know that I love a prickly heroine. You know that I love a bad bitch who is used to taking care of herself, and then this big hunk of a man is like, I love you. I also appreciated how Bexley's like self-consciousness was done, because like there's some very real things, like particularly when there's a certain time when they're having sex where he puts her in this like certain position. He has her kind of twist around, and she's like just feeling her like fat move and is kind of like falling out of the moment. And he's like, whoa, 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 where are you going? And she's like, this isn't the most flattering position for me. And he's like, do you feel my dick, woman? Do you feel how turned on I am? There is nothing about you that I have any problems with. And I just love that shit so much, because it's not like she's constantly body hating. Like, she knows she looks good in her suits and in her, you know, how she looks, but she will just have those moments because, I mean, her ex-husband was a shitty man to her, and a lot of the men that she's been with, like, it's been good to be with them, but they've never encouraged her, like, self-confidence, as we say. So I still ended up talking for almost a freaking hour, but oh yeah, I gave this 5 stars. It was a 4.5 on my spice scale. I can't wait to read the next one. And then there's a new one coming out the end of the month, which will be Petra's Biker, which is supposed to be an MMF. And I'm very excited because we're seeing little like hints of it as we go. So I'm a fan of this MC series. If you also have wanted to try MC, but you're like worried about the, actually the first book had the most of the biker stuff in there. Like the, like bitches is used a little bit, but it very quickly like goes away, because once Birdie is part of everything, Loki is kind of like, let's not talk like that anymore. So they're definitely a biker gang that is willing to be, you know, fixed a little bit, as it were. So anyway, loving this series so much. Highly recommend it. It's a great time. I loved it. So anyway, there we go. I gave you a nice long one to tide you over, because like I said, I don't know if we'll have a weekly wrap up next week or if it will be postponed to like the next week. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure if you've made it this far that you like this video. Make sure you're subscribed. That is very important for my channel where we're at right now. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.